One of the most empowering ways you can face the fact that you've been dealing with a narcissist or somebody whose moral compass is just not oriented in a healthy direction, and you realize that this person really doesn't have your best interest at heart, and you realize through their actions and behaviors that they really couldn't care less if you were well, if you were unwell, and they wouldn't hesitate twice to harm you if they could go unscathed. When you realize that you're dealing with this type of person, of course it can be shocking. It can be you can find yourself in disbelief because you are probably hopeful that this person might have been a good match for you, a good compatible person, somebody maybe who could be a healthy partner in some type of relationship, possibly a romantic relationship, somebody who potentially you saw yourself with, you saw yourself potentially being with for the long term. But if you, depending how you face the fact, that the realization that you're dealing with somebody like that, the way that can impact you in the medium term and the long term, really depends on how you kind of see that, face that, and bounce out off of that. And what I really mean is, it can be very empowering if you face such an encounter, such an experience, as something that teaches you a lot about yourself, as opposed to trying to shift blame on the other person and obsessing and ruminating over the thought of how bad and evil and mean they are. Because when you start thinking about, okay, how did I get involved with this person? How did I let it get this far? How did I not see what I was dealing with? How did I potentially ignore lots of red flags that were in front of me? When you start asking those questions, if you take your own accountability, in a sense, realizing that you do have some power to kind of self-reflect and to see where you allowed yourself to get that far, then that's a very powerful place to be. Because yes, the other person probably was not good for you, was probably not a nice person, but you cannot change them, you know. And once you depart from them, they're probably going to go find somebody else to do the same thing. But that shouldn't be your problem anymore. You want to let that person go, and you want to think, fine, how did I get here? How, yes, of course you're going to ruminate quite a bit over what happened, because, the thought that somebody could have misled you for a long time and potentially abused you in several different ways for a long time. That kind of experience can linger in your mind for a long time. But in time, you do process it, you do bounce out of it. But your primary focus should be on yourself, and you should accept that you do have the power to prevent something like that from happening again. But to kind of reside in that power, to really make use of that, you have to acknowledge, okay, how did I let myself come into this experience that I just experienced now? And you realize things like, maybe you were too needy. Sometimes loneliness can cause us to get too close to toxic people who all of a sudden present themselves as your solution. Or maybe you were trying to escape from something. Maybe, sometimes people even want to escape from things like boredom, or just want to experience something new, or just kind of want to feel seen, or um people sometimes just want to evolve in a certain way, and then they jump at the first opportunity that seems to present themselves in a serious way. And oftentimes manipulators target people who kind of feel that you know they want to be fixed. They're trying to find that person to save them, that they really want that kind of help. Manipulators are really good at targeting people who might be vulnerable in that sense. I mean, vulnerable is one word, but that can encapsulate so many things, like, extreme neediness, need of validation, just feeling a bit lost, just not really maybe knowing yourself very well, not knowing what you want. But the important thing for you is just to kind of understand the process that took you and led you to getting entangled with the narcissist, or the manipulator that you may have been with, and just acknowledging yourself. You know, why why did you find yourself ignoring the red flags? Why did you find yourself accommodating so many behaviors that probably were not good. Of course, the person probably would have given you some good feedback, some good, you know, the love bombing, the idealization. They would have hooked you in by giving you some kind of good positive reinforcement, but it wouldn't have been a healthy kind of positive reinforcement. It would have been a type of positive reinforcement that was designed to get you addicted to them and dependent on them, as opposed to somebody who cares and wants to to develop a healthy give and take type relationship. But when you kind of witness all that and you acknowledge the whole process from the time you met the person to the point where you realized who they were, and you acknowledge all the red flags that you would have ignored and everything that was a bit suspicious, but you stayed in despite that, and then you start asking yourself why. You do learn. I mean, it takes time to process, but you do that. You ask yourself these questions kind of lightly, softly, subtly, and just think about it. You might not have the answers at the same moment, the same day, but over the course of days, weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even longer, piece by piece does settle in. But the important thing is that you do have that healthy level of self-reflection, because a lot of people come out of abusive relationships, and I've seen this. They could spend 20 years ruminating around about how bad the other person was. Whereas in fact, yes, they are right. That other person was bad. But it's, why is it in your interest to spend your whole life ruminating about somebody? Ruminating about somebody who was unfair to you? And if you take it to the next step, the reason they were unfair to you is because they saw that you would let them do it. And that's where your empowerment comes in. You acknowledge your partner and you say, enough, I'm not going to let this happen again. You know, the experience was bad, but it was good at the same time because I learned something. It's that whole mindset piece. And just the rumination can be very negative and very heavy, but it's so important to let that go and think, I see where I went wrong. But you know what? It's fine, because you sometimes we have to make mistakes to learn. Sometimes we have to go through a bit of hell to come out the other side and not repeat the same mistake. And then once you bounce out of it, you do move on and it doesn't affect you anymore. So yeah, it's just this whole empowerment piece. Just bear in mind that you do have you do have the ability to bounce out of really unhealthy toxic relationships in a good way without being obsessed in a ruminating in a negative way over that person for your whole life. It's just about acknowledging the part you played, understanding yourself a bit more, and then you can kind of morph yourself, your character, your personality into the person who you want to be. It's just evolve into the person you want to be, grow, and life will always present challenges, right? Well, maybe your future challenge doesn't have to be dealing with a manipulator. Maybe your future challenge can be running a marathon, or starting your business, or doing something else. We always want challenges, but there's no point us repeating challenges that are unhealthy. Grow from it and think, I'm stronger because of it, and I can do great things. And just apply yourself in things that you'll find fulfilling.